Hi everybody, this will be the 1 hour tutorial video for the Computer Science 30S remote learning tutorial. Let's take a look at it on my website. So if you go to Computer Science 30S, on the main page, like the main page of Computer Science 30S, are all the remote learning instructions, including the document for the tutorial for remote learning. And there'll be, after I'm finished recording this, the link to the video that you're looking at right now, which will be going through the tutorial step by step. Okay, we want to get started. The tutorial was designed to take 1 hour following these instructions. Obviously, for some of you, it's going to take a little longer than an hour because you may not code as quick as I do. But as an alternative as well, if you're having trouble coding at a pace, or you have some bugs in your code or otherwise, you will find a link to a folder with PDFs of all the code. And those PDFs you can actually copy and paste from if needed. So that's yet another option that you could do. There we go. Okay, so there you can see those things there. But we want to get started. So I'm going to set up a new project. I'm going to call it Computer Science 30S Tutorial. Space. Okay, and we're going to follow through this. Okay, so this tutorial for Computer Science 30S has a project set up with one Java file in it. This tutorial is designed to cover the unit we missed and didn't have time to do, called classes. And what you're going to see in this tutorial is you're going to be adding multiple files into this project, multiple Java files or multiple classes. However, we start with, in the tutorial, if you read through, we add one line to our main method, just one line. Okay, so let me zoom in on that. The line for main is vehicle select, called screen, equals a new vehicle select, semicolon, and 2 round brackets. Now, the way you spell vehicle select here and here has to be exactly the same. Okay? It has to be the exact same spelling, camel casing, everything. Now, this will generate an error, but we're not going to fix the error using the light bulb. Instead, what we're going to do is, to this project, we're going to add a new file. So I want you to click on File, New File. Okay? We're not making a new project, we're adding a file into our project. This is also covered in the tutorial. If you read the second page here, it shows you the exact same thing we're doing here. Okay? Now, what we select is under Swing GUI Forms JFrame form. This is now going to be something visual that we can build and design with. For those of you who took Computer Science 20S, this is very similar to the way it works in Visual Studio. So I'm going to go next, and I'm going to call it Vehicle Select again. The way you spell it here must, again, exactly match the way you wrote it here. That's the idea. We're adding this file to our project, the file that we referred to in main, and then we're going to hit Finish. Now, this will change Visual Studio, or pardon me, NetBeans, into an environment that looks like Visual Studio, which is what the tutorial then goes on to show you, how you build a GUI using the palette over here and the properties window over here. So using this palette up here, I'm going to take a label, a button, and a text field. Now, text field looks like a text box for those of you who did the grade 10 course. Also, there's something similar called a text area. We're not going to be using that. So these are the things we're using: a label, a button, and a text field. So let me start building. Label here, text field here, button down here. Now, once you draw them on here, you can resize them and reshape them by dragging any of the corner areas. You can also do this with the form itself. So I can resize it, reshape it like that. Now, if you're wondering, like, why does this look like Visual Studio a little bit? I might encourage you to click on a button up here that has like a little eyeball on it. This gives you a preview of what your design is going to look like. And now you can see it more like it would apply when it's running. And now you can see, oh, there's that little X and the minimize, maximize buttons. That's where they are. So that little preview is up there. Okay, we've got more to design, but we're also going to be using our properties window because we're going to change the text property of, for example, the text field or the label. So I'm going to start with the label and go to text and just put in name. So I hit enter, changes it here, and it changes it up here. For this one, I'm going to leave it empty, so I'm going to take that, remove it, hit enter. And for this one, I'm going to put choose motorcycle. Okay, there we go. Now, I'm also going to need the other labels. So I'm going to get another label on here. This one is for the motorcycle is going to be red. Another label. The motorcycle's going to be, whoops, fastest. And another label. It's going to be the smallest build. And it cannot take damage, so I'm going to put that as a label. Okay, and that's going to be for my motorcycle, all the things you saw there. And so I'm going to have that same set of stuff for my other things. I'm just going to pause the video here for a second. I realize that in general that would keep going, but I'm just going to pause that. Okay, everybody, I'm back. As you can see, I got this all designed. And now we're going to have to name everything. And again, if you did the 20th course, you're used to this idea of naming objects. You don't, as it says here, have to name everything. Actually, the only things you need to name is the 3 buttons and the text field. And this is actually pretty easy. As it explains on the tutorial, the way to do this is to right-click and change the variable name is the easiest way to do this. So let's do that. I'm going to right-click, change variable name on this text box. I'm going to type in name text and click OK. Now I'm going to do the same thing for these. So choose 1 button, change variable name, choose 2 button, change variable name, choose 3 button. Okay, so now I have those named. You'll notice there's a navigator along the side here, and once you rename things, it'll also show a change in the names here along the side in the navigator. All those labels we don't need to worry about, so we're just going to call them JLabel whatever. Okay, it's now time to start looking at the code. To switch between the design and the code in NetBeans, you're going to click on these 2 buttons right here. Source for the source code, design for the design. So notice I can do that. But also, just like Visual Studio, to code a button, you just double click the button and you get immediately to the code where that button can go. Okay? So let's put that code in. When I click a button, I want the code for code button 1 to call my own method called choose, and I'm going to say this is me choosing car 1 or vehicle 1. And I'm going to call that method, and I know that method doesn't exist, but I'm going to jump back to my design and do that for motorcycle. Didn't jump me there, but here we go. And I'm going to say choose 2. And then I'm going to jump back to my design for this one. Oh, and I screwed that up. I forgot to put in the right thing. It's not motorcycle. It's motorcycle, car. Oops. I'm changing the wrong thing. choose car, and it jumps to that code, and choose truck, and it jumps to the code. Choose 3. Okay, there we go. Choose 1, choose 2, choose 3. Then I'm going to use the light bulb to create a method called choose. I'm going to go down to that method. It'll appear at the bottom here. We'll get ready for coding there. You will notice when the designer works, it builds its own version of main. You can actually delete that main if you want. If you leave it, that's fine too. But I'm going to delete it just so it's less to look at. You'll also notice there's a bunch of code that's in gray. That's what the designer writes for you. You can't change that code. Okay, so we've got this method choose, but just before that method, we're going to actually write our own method. Private void start. So we're going to have that method there as well. So we have choose and we have start. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll back up beyond this code up here to code near the top where you see this thing that says public vehicle select. And then you see something that says init components. This is obviously a method that we didn't write, it's written for us, but we're going to go underneath that method and call our start method from here. So init components is actually a method hidden inside that actually does all the work to make this design look the way it looks. We can't edit it because that's what the editor's for, but that's how it writes the code to do all that work for us. And then we get to start. All right, now we're going to write the code for start. But I'm going to show you a sneaky way to get this done quickly. As I pointed out with the tutorial, if you want, you can, for example, go to this vehicle select.pdf where you get the exact code I was just demonstrating, start and all that stuff. And all this code here, choose 1, choose 2, choose 3. And then you can go down to start right here. And there are the 4 lines for start, right there, the 4 lines of code and the comment. And if you want, you can take these lines right from the PDF, you do it right from the website even, and you can copy and paste them. It's a little bit tricky on the website, but there we go. Copy, paste. Might have to clean them up a little bit, but that's a quick way to get that code in there if you need it. Now, it will result in an error right now. We're going to fix that error in a minute. Okay, but that error will be resolved once the code gets put in there. Okay, same with choose. So with choose, you can go down here and it's the choose code is, you know, an if statement and a J option pane and a select thing. And again, this thing called globals, which we'll get to. But again, you can take that code if you need to. Now, another option is you don't have to go right off the website. You can actually download this PDF, which is what I'm going to try. Open the download in a program like Adobe Acrobat, which you can also copy and paste code from if you need to. So here I could also select the code and copy and paste it from there. But, you know, also if you're, you know, taking the time to go through this tutorial, you may want to type this code yourself. That's entirely up to you. But I'm going to try to copy and paste it. Make my life a little bit easier here. Come on, there we go. And a quick way to clean it up, you might remember from one of our NetBeans tips, Alt-Shift-F auto formats it, and I'm going to get rid of these comments just to keep the code to just the code itself. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now, still going to have some errors. One of these errors we can fix right now. Why is J option pane giving us an error? Because we're going to use the light bulb to import it. Import J option pane. That'll fix that error. This one here with vehicle and globals, we'll definitely fix that in a second. That's not going to be that difficult. Okay. We're going to change this parameter I to the word vehicle, which will then fix it down here. okay? But we still have some trouble with globals, motorcycle, car, and truck, okay? Oh, and there is one more line after I copied this as well. Game screen, screen equals new game screen. That also is going to need to be put into our tutorial, okay? Also causing an error that we'll be fixing, but that will finish the code for this first vehicle select screen and the first screen with main. So what main does is it launches vehicle select. Vehicle select starts here with the designer and then runs some code. Now what I would encourage you guys to do is to read through the comments here where I explain what's going on in these lines of code. I want to keep this tutorial to an hour, so I'm going to go much quicker than I would normally recommend. You could follow on Teams for a slower version, or you can follow at your own pace and read through this at a much slower version. But that's what we're going to do. Now, the next thing that the tutorial says to do, after completing this code, okay, is to once again add a new Java class to our project called globals. So we're going to do that next. Go here. We're going to open up again. You can see there's 2 files in our project now. We're about to add a third file, new file, same way we did it before. This time though, we're not going to a GUI form. We're not making something visual. It's just a regular Java class. A class is just a piece of code. So here we go. Java class, next. I'm going to name it globals with a capital G. You notice I referred to this in my code, so once I create it, that'll help start to fix some of those errors. Hit finish, and your code will not show up like this. Yours will show up more like just this, okay? Spot to put code in. Looks very similar to the ones we've been doing all year, except the ones we did all year included public static void main, a method, and this includes no methods, a class with just no methods whatsoever. Now by doing that, it did fix, for example, some of the code here, but we're still getting errors. But now we need to finish the code for globals. Now you can type it if you'd like, but what I'm going to do is once again, I'm going to go back here, find the PDF called globals. You can see here it's just some code right here. It's not that much. Some comments and stuff. This time I think I'm going to also take the comments just to show you how you can do that quite quickly. I would take this comment right here over to my NetBeans and add that comment right there. And now I've got my code commented, right? So that's not that difficult either, to put the comments into the code. Now I've got the comments in there, but now I'm going to get the code in there. So back here, grab this line, these lines here, copy it, paste it. I may have to re-indent it or clean it up another way. You'll notice I'm getting an error on this line for color. This is nothing we need to create. We can use the light bulb for this one and import this thing called color. You would have seen us doing this in the last unit called arrays. We were doing something like this with colors. There is one more line. I just didn't fit it all on one page here. So I'm also going to do this line as well. Now this line will cause an error. That's okay. We'll fix that in a second. Hitting save. You'll notice that did in fact clean up most of the errors back here on vehicle select. Still getting an error with motorcycle, car, truck, and game screen, but those other errors have been cleaned up. Now, what are we going to do for vehicle? Well, for vehicle, we're jumping back to our tutorial here. Now that we're done globals, vehicle is the next piece of code we're going to work on. So to do this, we're going to once again add a file to the project called vehicle. However, you can also do it this way. Vehicle is just another class. You can actually use the light bulb to help you make this if you want. Click the light bulb, and you can actually click Create Class Vehicle. Make sure you pick the first one, the top one. And there you can see it automatically created a file called vehicle.java, which is a class file. A class file and a Java file are essentially the same thing. Okay, so now I've got this code, and it's got to match what's here. So if I want to, I could key this in, read the comments, and get going on it. Or, as I've already shown you, I could go to the PDF called Vehicle, and I could get some of this code out of the PDF and get essentially most of it, if not all of it, if I need to. Copy it. And I think you would do this a lot slower than the way I'm doing it. But there we go. Still needs a few little fixes. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of some of these comments just to keep it a little simpler for you to look at. But there's vehicle. We started. Class vehicle with its properties and its methods. You're going to want to read about that a little bit to understand what I'm talking about with this terminology about properties and methods. If you are a student continuing on into Computer Science 40S, I will be reviewing everything about this unit called classes at the start of the Computer Science 40S unit course. All right, but there's a little more to grab other than just that. Oh no, actually that is all of it. That's all the code for the class called vehicle. And now I hit save. And you can see that fixed the mistake in globals. Still got a mistake here with motorcycle, car, truck, etc. But we're going to get there next. Okay, so that's vehicle done. Next up on the tutorial is to create motorcycle, car, and truck. Okay, this makes sense. So now you could do this individually, or I'm going to do them one at a time. Oops. File, new file. Java class, motorcycle. And while I'm here, I'm going to do the next one. New file. Okay. Java class, car, new file, Java class, truck. Okay, so I've added car, motorcycle, and truck. So you can see here, quickly I've got from what we started with was just one Java file to now multiple Java files all interacting with each other. And that's essentially what this classes unit was about. Now I could take that little shortcut as well to get to, for example, whichever class I need. So I could, for example, start with car here, and I could get the code for it. A little tricky sometimes to kind of wait a minute before it allows you to copy and paste this. There we go. Come on. Let's take care of car. And then we take care of truck. And I realize I am working quickly here, but I want to stay within our time limit. So there's truck. And the code is not that complicated, okay? It does have this interesting thing here, extends vehicle, and there's an explanation for that that I'd like you to read in the notes when you have time. And then the code, it's not much code for that. And then now we got to do motorcycle. Motorcycle, I put the most of the comment in, so I'm going to actually grab that from motorcycle, put it in my tutorial. Okay, and I'll get rid of some of this there. Okay, and that takes care of motorcycle. Okay, you can see here, there's some good comments there for you to read about what motorcycle is, and there's the code. So now, with that done, with car, truck, motorcycle, vehicle, globals, we go back to vehicle select. Now the only error is this thing called game screen, which is the final thing to code. It has the most code, but it's the final thing there. Now I realize I went pretty quickly through a lot of that code. You didn't really get to type it. You didn't really get to learn it. And that's part of this tutorial and trying to stay within a 1 hour frame. I realize it's probably going to take you more than an hour to do this, but I wanted to provide you options, as you can see, for you to be able to do it quite quickly, okay? Yes, you should probably read the comments to learn this content and stuff, but we're in a different time, and so I'm doing my best to get this done as quick as possible for you guys. And now we're left with this idea of making our final thing something called a game screen, the actual screen for the game, okay? Now, to do this, I'm not going to use the light bulb. What I'm going to do is once again go new Java file, but game screen is also a Swing GUI JFrame form. So the game screen is something you're going to be designing and building. Calling it game screen so it matches up with the code I have. Hit finish. Okay, now you'll notice there are no errors if I go back to vehicle select. Vehicle select is now completely free of errors. Everything about it looks good. Okay, and now I could actually run it a little bit just to see what it could look like at this point. So it starts with this vehicle racing, car, truck, motorcycle, put in a name, choose one of the options, and at that point it would stop. But at least it didn't crash, right? Just kept going. Okay, so now what about game screen? What are we going to do with it? We're going to build a design for this. With game screen, okay, if we move through the tutorial, car, truck, game screen is another design. It's a little more of a complicated design. Most of what you put on here are labels, essentially all labels on here. So just a bunch of labels is all you're going to put on there. Tons of labels. All the names are there for the labels. You don't have to name everything because it'll look exactly like mine. I will note that there is also a label kind of hidden in the background here, above or behind that other label. So you're going to want to take the time to build that. I'm going to pause the video so that I can build mine, and then we'll pick up where that left off with the code there, okay? One quick note before I pause the video again. Please read the bottom here where it shows you how to make a label filled with color, and you have to set something called opaque, and you have to change the background, and then pick the color, whatever colors essentially you want there. Okay, I'm back. So the design is done. You can see here as well, everything is named. And again, I know I'm cheating a little bit, but I went through what would have been explained here on the tutorial document to do that design and to change all the names and change all the colors, okay? Once again, just real quick, when you select a label, there's a property of the label called opaque, right here, and you just check that off. Once that's checked off, then now you can fill a JLabel with a color. For color, you go to where it says background, and you click on the little button with the ellipsis on it right here. It brings up a little color chooser. Then you can just sort of pick through the different colors right here. And there's lots of different options for different ways you can do this, right? Different ways you can pick really specific colors, any kind of way you want there to pick the colors. So that's how you do that when you make a label. And then again, you can change the text and everything else. All right, so that would complete the design part. This will take some time to do that. And now we get on to the code for game screen. So to shortcut this code, again, I can go into the PDF and grab the code I need. Now this is the longest piece of the code, right? There's the designer stuff and then all the custom code that we put in ourselves to make it work, okay? It's going to require some imports. It's going to require some cleanup. So I'm going to take care of that now by taking a look at this thing called game screen. Okay, so for game screen, I'm going to go slow enough to be able to do it all. I'm going to actually start with the comment up here. I'm going to grab this comment, copy it, and go to my game screen source code. It's big enough now that we can see it. And I'm going to put that comment in there. So there's game screen. Okay, there's the comment for it. This should be fixed, right? You should be putting in your own name, your own date, January of 2021, right? So that it matches up with what you see here, right? So your own name, not my name, and your own date in the comments. Then I can see here under this thing called a constructor. And again, learning what the word constructor means is something you'd want to learn by reading the comments of the tutorial. So you really get a feel for what those mean. So I'm going to take this comment here, this line of code, and bring it over and pop it in right here. Okay? Start. Now it's going to give me an error at first. That's fine. Then a bunch of code that's generated for me. I don't touch that. Then there's a thing called main, which I've already mentioned. You can remove. You don't have to. And then there's going to be a spot where we can add our own methods down at the bottom here. However, when I say down at the bottom, it is still above this last bracket. So I'm going to take that last bracket, put my cursor right in front of it, and move it down a little bit. So I've got some room here to add my own methods and stuff in here. Okay, a little bit of a trick to kind of get that in there underneath this code. You can't actually change this code. Nothing you can do. You can't delete it. You can't change it. That code is written by the designer itself. Okay, back to here. I'm also going to need to do this code called form key pressed. Now it tells you how to do this in the comment here in the note right here, but I'm going to show you how to do it. What you do is you go to your design, you make sure you're not clicking on any of the labels. So I'm just clicking on the form itself, somewhere on the form. If I right click on a label, that's not going to work. So I'm going to right click on the form, go to events. So I right clicked, went to events, then I'm going to go here to key. It's a keyboard event. Okay, and that's where we get at the code called key pressed. So I'll show you that again. Right click, events, key pressed. When it's a button, it's much simpler. You just have to double click the button. But because this is using the keyboard, we got to kind of use the designer to our advantage. It's still a lot less code than us writing it ourselves. But this is the trick to doing that. Key pressed. Okay, so we're in a piece of code right there. And what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to just do this. You can key it in yourself, or you can cheat and copy and paste it like what I'm going to do. Okay, passes logic to our own method. This is also our own method. So I can actually use the light bulb if I want to create them. Or I'm just going to go here and just take the code directly. So I'm going to take this code, start, copy, paste. Now, there's more to it than just the one page. So now I got to go down to the next page to get more of the code. But I'm going to try and do multiple pages at once now, copying all these pages of code. It's a little tricky, but I think I can do it with the PDF here. Up to, but not including the last curly bracket. Copy, paste. Now I'm going to format all this. Alt-Shift-F. Now it didn't do a perfect job, so we're going to have to go back and clean this code up. But it did do a lot of the job. So we're going to go back up and start cleaning this code up a little bit. Okay, here's a mistake it made. For some reason, when I copied and pasted, it didn't put a space between these lines, private, etc. So those lines need the space right there. Now, this thing called timer. For that, I'm going to use the light bulb, and I'm going to import it. For this thing called JLabel, I'm going to click the light bulb, and I'm going to import it. So that's a quick way to clean up that code. You'll notice there's going to be an array in use here. Notice the square brackets. All right, moving down. Here's just something in the comments where space was taken out. Here's the space is taken out. Int X, int Y, int W, int H. X, Y, width, and height is what that is there. Now I'm going to remove some of the comments here just to show you there isn't as much code as you'd think. There is a lot. There's a lot of code, but maybe not as much as you thought there was. So a lot of it, again, is comments. Okay, but this is all good. I don't have to do anything with this code. Just comments there. Okay, so that's what start looks like. When it starts, it does these things. Now I'm going to move down and fix some of these. Again, some spacing issues, but not a big deal. How do I set the timers? I'm going to get rid of the comment. You should read it. This thing, action listener, is going to require us to import it. Now, another option, if you don't want to use the light bulb for a lot of this stuff, is you could have gone back to the top of this code where it had its own import lines up here, and theoretically you could have just taken these lines, which I'm about to do, and copied them and gone to the top of this code where its import lines are and pasted them. And then it just brings the imports in for you by putting them in there. And that would have fixed a lot of the code that was going on down here with these things called timers that are going on. Okay, so there's a timer. There's a timer. For those of you who did the grade 10 course, you might remember what timers are. They run things on time, like a loop. Unfortunately, in NetBeans, you can't just drag and drop them onto your design. You actually have to write code to create timers, so that's what this code is doing. This is not part of the classes unit. This is extras material. And then this method called tick looks fine. Nothing to fix there, other than maybe some spaces in the comments. For driver tick, I'm going to have to redo some of these spaces. Other than that, it looks pretty good. Get rid of that comment there. Get rid of that comment there. There's driver tick. Here's opponent tick. Just have to fix up some spaces again. Get rid of this comment here. Get rid of this comment here. Getting rid of most of these comments. Other than that, looks good. Getting near the bottom now. This timer is to create feeling of movement. That's weird. And let's take a look at this code. Not much to clean up. I'm just going to get rid of some of the comments. And generates a random X coordinate, double C, double low, double high, double X. And that's now all fixed up. Generates a random number. And when a key is pressed, this looks fine. Checking collisions. Getting rid of comments, but other than that, looks pretty good. And there's our else code, collision detection. Now here's a weird one on the last one. We need a space right there. Just for some reason, when you copy and paste, sometimes gets rid of some of those spaces. And that looks like it. That seems to fix all the errors of the tutorial for all the different classes and all the different Java files within it. Now the big test. We're going to run this thing, see what happens. Mr. Walks. I'm going to choose the motorcycle, and I'm using my keyboard to control it. You notice at the top it has my name, Mr. Walks. It's showing the time that's passed, how many cars I passed. Remember, the motorcycle can take no damage. So as soon as I touch a car, this game is over. Notice that the center lines are creating a sort of the appearance of movement. There it is, game over. I passed 2 cars in 20 seconds, and that game is over. I'm going to run it again just to test a different vehicle. This time I'll choose the truck, which can take up to 3 collisions, but it's much slower. It's blue and it's much bigger, so it's harder to dodge. Oh, better get out of the way here. Here comes that vehicle. I'm going to take a collision with it. Notice the car just disappears, and I keep the game going. I'm like the motorcycle. And if I get to the very edge, it just bounces me off, which is nice. So I don't have to worry about going outside the lane. It just bounces me off the lane. And I'm going to take my second collision here. Looks like I got one remaining, which is going to be this one. And so I can take one more. I forgot how many the truck can take. Take 3 collisions, and then it's game over for the truck. So it looks like we've completed our tutorial at this point. And that's it. That's the tutorial. It is a fast thing to do to get the marks. You do not have to complete all of it to get the marks, but that's what it is. I realize you're going to be copying and pasting a lot of code, or if you're going to be keying it in, that's even better because you're going to learn it better that way. But please read the comments as you do this. This video was designed to do the tutorial in an hour. It's actually under an hour now, this video. But I'll be doing this live on Teams as well and having this video uploaded for covering our remote learning tutorial.